kind of this different kind of video. It's going to be kind of interesting. First, I'm going to do a post trip because I just got done driving this into my drive shift. I'm already on duty, and then we're going to put Aaron Mays on duty, and he's going to do his pre-trip after I'm done with my post trip. Normally drivers would do their post and pre-trips together at the same time, but because somebody has to hold the video camera, first I'm going to do a post trip, and then we're going to hand the camera. Then he's going to hand the camera off to me, and then I'm going to follow him around. And you guys can tell us who you think did a better job, who explained stuff better. And Aaron's going to have the advantage of watching me royally mess up, because when it comes to inspections, I'm probably not that good. I am going to talk about a few extra things. So we're going to get out here, and we got to shut off the truck, put the hazards on. Headlights are on, and we're gonna jump out. I'm gonna get my actual glasses on so I can actually see stuff. Set these up here, and I'll see you outside the truck. All right, guys, you're gonna need gloves, your hammer, and preferably you have an air gauge. And I don't really use it all the time. I do try to bring it with me. Normally, a lot of times it just sets in here, and if I bump a tire that feels kind of light, then I'll get out the air gauge usually. But it's good to have it with you. I'm probably just gonna leave it here because I already know from earlier that this truck's fine and all the tires are fine. Some companies will make you fill out an inspection book. This is only for whenever we have a change of equipment, whenever we pick up a truck, whenever we swap trailers, whenever we're done with the truck and we're post-tripping it. This is only to communicate from the drivers to our mechanic shop so that we can write stuff up. So this is how we communicate with our shop. When we get back to Des Moines, whatever we write up goes on this piece of paper, and then they will sign off on it, and then the next driver will sign off on the bottom, and then they'll start the next sheet. So that's how that works. So first thing on a post-trip or pre-trip on any inspection, you're going to want to check to make sure that there's no lights on the dash, like ABS or engine lights or anything like that. So we're gonna see how bad of an inspection I do. So anyway, open up your engine compartment. We got these wonderful deer guards. We got to take these unlatched. Unlatched. So these I just happen to be right here. You want to check anything. You're looking for anything obvious damage. You want to look for any liquids that might have been sprayed because something, came loose. You want to check for any frayed belts or anything like that. You check the inside portion of the tire and your brake drums. You look for anything that looks like it's going bad. As a truck driver, most truck drivers are not diesel mechanics. We do not, when we look at the engine, most of us, it's like looking at the human brain. We're not surgeons or diesel mechanics, so there's a lot of things that, unless it's obviously damaged, and obviously, like if the truck's been making noises, funny noises, or been running funny, or you got lights on the dash, the average truck driver ain't gonna know anything unless there's obvious, unless there's oil all over the place because something came loose or something like that. Unless it's obvious, most drivers aren't going to know that something's wrong. Our job is to try to catch it early on an inspection so that we can get it fixed before we start driving, or so that when we start driving we can drive straight to a shop somewhere that we can get it fixed. And hopefully we can limp to the shop instead of trying to wait for some sort of mobile unit to come from a shop to fix it on the road, because it's more expensive for your company, or unless you're like an owner operator or lease person. So anyway, moving on. From here you can kind of get a better angle to see how your coolant is from that side. Sometimes it's harder to tell if the coolant level is where it should be. And you can tell we're kind of sitting at a slant on this hill, but you can basically tell that that's right where it should be. So we're looking at this, we're going to work our way around and come back to the same spot. So we're obviously checking all our lights as we walk around, which I will skip that. We check our headlights and make sure that our turn signal and our headlight are on, and we're checking for anything that's damaged on the truck. On post trips and pre-trips, mirrors, and for anything obvious on the, obviously if the steers are bad, if they're flat, they'd be sitting on the ground, and it should all be obvious. The next thing, you've got to get the engine time for the oil to drain down into the pan. Every truck's a little different. Some trucks could take up to 10 minutes for the oil to drain into the pan. It depends on the truck. Some are a little faster, some are a little slower. I'm going to go ahead and check the oil, and then when Aaron checks it, he might get a different reading, because the truck will have been sitting for a longer period of time. So we'll check the oil. We got to wipe up the oil that's already on the dipstick, stick it back in, bring it back out, and then we check the level, and as we can see, we are good. So put that back, and then I'll put this little towel back here for when Aaron does his. We're looking for anything obvious. We even check the level on this, it looks good. If that gets up real high, then we gotta let them know. You check to make sure that this doesn't wiggle more than that. I think it's, can't remember how many inches. There's supposed to be like so many inches of play, but as long as it doesn't move more than that, for the most part it's good. Check for cracks in the windshield. We got a dirty windshield, so it's hard to see. We ran through a lot of snow, so we got a lot of salt residue on the windows. Grab my trusty little hammer here, work away checking our lights, making sure they blink. When you check these lights, you don't even want to make sure that they're blinking, but that there's two different things in there. There's the one that stays on and the one that blinks. Every light that you go by that blinks, you want to make sure that it blinks, like your turn signals and stuff. And your marker lights, you want to make sure that they are on. And sometimes it's hard to tell in the sunlight, but we got these little LED up there in the corner, these little tiny things, so they're real easy to see. But some trucks during the sunlight, it's hard to see. Sometimes it's easier to do an inspection at night in that respect for the lights, because then you can really see whether the light's working or not. All right, you want to check your hoses, make sure your hoses are good and not frayed and that they're attached and everything. The truck is off, so we're not listening for air right now because the truck's not running, so we can't really check for air leaks right now. But you want to thump the tires, and the thing about you thumping tires, they can always feel a little different. We have these things called crossfires, and they're never accurate. Like this one's showing red, working its way to black, which means that one of these tires might be getting low, and without putting an air gauge on it, you don't know. Well, you still don't know which one, but if you put an air gauge on that, let me do that. If you put an air gauge on it, and it shows about 115 pounds, so it's good. But that's shared, I think. It's either shared air pressure or it's just the front tire. That one feels a little different, but you know, sometimes they do feel different. Sometimes the tires can feel different even though they're fine. So check your landing gear and just do this looking for damage. Whenever you're walking by your trailer, even if you're not doing an inspection, you stop somewhere, go in the store, always check over your truck. Just glance at it, look at it, make sure that there's nothing obvious. When you're thumping your tires and doing this, you're also looking for anything else that's damaged. You're just looking underneath and looking for stuff that might be broke, looking for anything obvious. Again, you can check those crossfires and stuff and see, but they feel fine. When the tire feels solid, you can tell the difference. If it starts to feel spongy, a solid tire you can tell is full of air. The more spongy it feels, the more it's missing air, and that's something that you learn with experience as you do it. So check to make sure you got your mud flaps on both behind your front dualies and your back on trailer and behind your drives. Want to make sure that your tail light is on. Now with an ABS light, if it is on, a lot of drivers will just because if that's on, it's a red flag for the DOT to pull you over. So a lot of drivers will, even though this ain't good, they'll reach under here, they'll reach under and look for those cords and they'll rip them out so that that light is not shining. They'll write up their ABS brakes, but so in case you drive through a scale house or you got a state patrol or a DOT officer that rolls by you, if they see that on, that's a red flag. That means they know they can pull you over, give you an inspection, and give you a ticket for something just because if that's on, then they know they got one thing to ding you on, and then they can stop you and look for other things. So that's one of the first things you'll get pulled over for is lights and tires. So you want to check all your lights, make sure you got your trio. We got the added left and right ones over there. We don't always have those. Make sure that your lights are blinking, but you also want to look very carefully. Is it still got lights on when the blinking one goes away? And the answer is yes on both. So you check all that, make sure that your license plate light is on, and it is. Make sure your door isn't damaged. For us hauling mail, make sure we got at least something keeping the door. You got a safety latch. We got a lock on here, but it's not locked. Sometimes we don't even have a lock, but we're supposed to have the thing locked. We don't always have one. Just keep looking at all your lights, looking down the trailer, making sure you got your mud flaps. And then you want to pump your tires, and they feel good, nice and solid. You want, if they feel like almost like solid as a brick, then you know they're good. So, and then again, when you're over here, look underneath, you're looking, and sometimes you might be doing this, like a lot of drivers will do like just like the only thing they'll check is lights and tires because they're in a hurry and a rush and they just want to get back on the road, so they won't open up the engine compartment and check the oil and shut the engine off. They won't check any of that. They'll just come underneath here and they'll just thump the tires and make sure their lights are good so they don't have any red flags get pulled over. Make sure your turn signals are working. Make sure that both lights are working, the blinking one and the standby one for running. And just keep going down, check, make sure no damages, make sure you got your tail lights on the truck are blinking and all that. So you got your mud flaps. The other thing you want to check is that all your airbags are good. Make sure you don't have any rust around any of your lugs on any of your tires and your rims. That's a sign that there's a loose lug nut. So we don't ever usually have any problems here at Allen Ritchie. And that looks good. looking for any obvious signs of damage anywhere. And now we're back here, turn signals are good, and we've already checked our fluids and all that. Our belts look good and everything's good. So all right, I'm done with my pre-trip. I'm gonna take over the camera. It is Aaron's turn to take over and do the pre-trip on this, and I'm gonna leave the air gauge and hammer here for him. And so it is Aaron May's turn to do his pre-trip.
Hey guys, my name's Aaron Mays. I am now going to show you my post-trip and show you how to do it. Maybe the better way or the faster way. I know this is my way that I do it, and if you end up learning it my way and feel like you're appreciating my way, then you can learn my way. But this is my way of how I'm going to do my post-trip. So first thing I'm going to start with is my oil stick. Alright. Make sure you pull your oil stick and make sure that it's at the right level. And usually the right level is somewhere between like right here or even right here where it's at. As you can see, you still have a lot of moist, still have a lot of oil in it. So it's not that bad. Usually if it's not good and you ain't got that much oil, usually it'll probably be as dry as this area right here. But in this case, we obviously got some good oil, so we're okay. First thing though, you're always supposed to wipe it. That's the first thing you're supposed to do. And then actually dip it again, pull it back and see if it's in the right, see if you still got some. And as you can see, we still got some good oil. It's still thick. So, and then after that, you put it right back in there. And now your oil level is good. Then after that, you want to check your steering rod. You just want to make sure you wiggle it. Make sure it's just not broken or bent. Make sure it's still intact. Nothing's loose on it. As you can see, it's still intact and it's not bent or broken, so we're good to go. Then you also want to make sure you check make sure your fuse boxes are sealed up tight. Make sure that it's not broken. The cap on the top is not broken, cracked, or anything. You not necessarily want to check the inside. You can if you want to, but I think everything is intact. All the fuses are inside the fuse box, so we ain't gonna worry about that. Down here, you want to make sure that your brake drums is fine, that they're intact. You want to make sure that your brake chamber doesn't look too damaged. You want to make sure your hose is not no abrasions or bolts or no torns into the hoses. Make sure your castle nut is not loose. Make sure it's intact. Obviously it's intact. Want to make sure your leaf spring right here is not bent, broken. It's secured. Want to make sure your U-bolts are definitely intact, because if they're not intact, well, you're gonna have a hell of a time not driving your steer tires. So they're definitely intact and they're definitely secured. Also, make sure your castle nuts are secured and tight. Also, you want to make sure your coolant level is at a good level. Usually that if it's like past the minimum, like right here, like minimum up here, then you're actually pretty good. Usually you could tell if you don't have any, if it's like real low, like if the fluid level is like this low. But obviously we're good. It's still good to go. We're still getting cold air, hot air, so we're good to go. Let's see. You want to make sure all your cords is not ripped, torn. No, they're still intact. Just make sure that all your hoses that are intact. Most drivers don't really check if their hoses or if their cords are intact or ripped. But me, I like to check just in case. You never know what might happen during bad weather or something. Somebody been messing with your truck, anything. So Yep, we are done on this side. The next thing I'm going to do is check my lights. Alright. Looks like our low beams are working on this side. And it looks like it's working on this side. Now when you check your lights, you always want to make sure that your lights, your left and your right signal lights are working, and the hazard lights are working. Obviously, if you can see, we got the hazard lights on, so they're working properly. As you can see, the cover of the lights are not cracked, and they're still intact, so you know that's okay. We're gonna now go check the high beams to see if that's still working. Alright, as you can see, our high beams are working. Usually you could check if it's through this high bolt right here. You know, if you got this high bolt, that's where your high beams are at. Also with this side, you can check if your high beams are also working, and they're also working as well. Also, you want to make sure that your reflective light is working as well. As you see, there's one on the inside. There's no cracked, it's not broken or anything, it's still attached, so it's still good to go. So alright, since we checked that, we also want to check your mirrors. Obviously the hood is down, but we can still check our mirrors. Right now our mirrors are still intact, it's not cracked, there's no stickers, no bugs or nothing like that is on it. It's real clean, real good to see. I ain't got to wipe it down, so we're good to go on this one. And on this one, this is also clean, not cracked, no stickers, no bugs on it, it's still intact, so we're good to go whenever we drive out of here. So both mirrors are clean, both mirrors are good to go. Let's see. Next thing I want to do is talk about the tires. Alright, so with your tires, this is your steer tires, alright? With your steer tires, first thing you want to do is also, you want to check see if it's flat, or you want to check the air pressure, alright? This is my tire gauge. I'll show you how to use it. Usually I rarely use it. You don't really have to use it that much, as my co-driver said. You rarely have to use it, but I mean sometimes you do have to use it because you end up having a flat tire on the road, so you never know. So first thing I'm going to talk about the steer tires is that you always want to thump it, and if it bounces back, if it feels like if it's solid, then it's a good tire. But the other thing you also want to check is make sure you check your tread depth. You want to make sure your tread depth is not faded, not worn out. Make sure that it's real deep, it's real good, because if you don't have good tread depth, I guarantee you, if you brake, you're going to end up sliding. You're going to end up sliding every time, and it could cause a flat tire, or it could cause you to slide in bad weather. So you always want to make sure that your tread depth is real deep. It's usually your tread depth should be like 32, 33, something like that, somewhere around there. But just make sure that they're deep. Usually I don't really go in depth of what's the measure of your tread depth, but usually if they're deep like this, that they're good to go. A worn out one, you could kind of see if it's worn out, like if you could barely see the tread, if you could barely see like how deep it is, then I'll tell you that you got to replace that tire. So alright, the next thing is I'm going to talk about my nutlets. You want to make sure that your nutlets are intact. These are rusty, but they're not that bad. They're still intact, they're still sealed up to the rim, so we're good to go. It's not going to go anywhere. And then you want to talk about your hub seal. Now, a lot of people don't know about their hub seal, but the hub seal contains oil inside. A lot of people did not know that. The only thing you need to know about the hub seal is that make sure that it's sealed up and it's not leaking, and that it's it's not bent or it's just not loose. Everything, you want to make sure everything over here is not loose, and it's not that it's not bent or it's not broken. Just want to make sure everything is sealed tight, and make sure that it's ready to go, and make sure that you just want to make sure that it's good. It's just real good and tight. That's it. So next thing I'm going to talk about is my dry tires. All right. Well, sorry folks, forgot one more thing. You also want to talk about your steps. You also want to make sure that your steps doesn't have any free debris. You know, make sure it's free debris. Make sure it's not cracked, bent, or broken. Make sure this part is not cracked, bent, or broken. Sometimes a lot of drivers drive with this down and not knowing that this could be dangerous because it could damage your battery while it's raining. Even though it has a cover, doesn't matter. It could be heavy rain coming, and a lot of rain could just mess up that battery. You could have, there's 4 batteries that this semi truck contains. So whenever it's raining real hard, that maybe that water could damage one of the batteries, and that's not good, because then you'll start having trouble starting up your truck, or power. You might not have enough power in your truck. So you want to make sure that this is concealed, closed. Make sure that the cover is not, you know, make sure it's covering everything that's inside the semi that's under here. And basically what's inside here is just your battery and then your depth, your fuel depth. So, but you want to make sure your steps not cracked, bent, or broken. You want to have free debris. All right, let's get to our dry tires. All right, I'm gonna get to this part right here, but first I want to talk about my dry tires. Same thing with the steer tires. You want to make sure that you got a good feel in it, solid. Make sure the tread depth is deep. As you can see, this tread depth is excellent. You want to make sure that your nug lugs are sealed, and then your hub seal is sealed as well, no leaks. Right here, as my partner said earlier, these are crossfires. Sometimes they'll tell the pressure or how low the tire is or how high it is. As you can see, this is not that accurate like he said before, but you know, hey, it's still good to go. Usually when it's all the way black, that's when it's not good to go. That means it's either low or it's going to be low. But you know, at this case right now, it's red and it's full of air. There's no leaks in it, so they're both good to go. So as you could go down here, this is our 5th wheel. All right, you don't have to check our 5th wheel. We don't have to inspect all that. You just want to make sure when you do your pre-trip inspection, you just want to check it out. You know, make sure your latch is still latching. You make sure stuff that's not bent or broken. Make sure your air bag down here, your airbag down here. If you will come right here and see right here, your airbag, what they call the wello. Make sure that your airbag is not torn, ripped, or anything like that. So you know, you don't want to. When you do your pre-trip, it's not that serious to check everything, but just to inspect it out and get a good glance at it. So next thing is you want to make sure that your reflective tape is on here tight, real sealed up. Make sure it's not ripped up or any scratched up or anything like that. As you can see, these reflective tapes are pretty good. Make sure your apron is pretty good. Make sure it's sealed tight. No bolts are missing. You know, make sure your bolts are tight. You know, just make sure everything is sealed on this trailer, because when you inspect your tractor, you also got to inspect your trailer too. So you want to make sure that everything is sealed tight, not cracked or bent or broken. All right, next thing we're going to talk about is our hoses. Basically, with our hoses, make sure it's not ripped, torn. Make sure they're sealed. Make sure that they're not, you know, free debris between you and the catwalk and the hoses. There you go. Make sure that the hoses and the catwalk are not really touching each other. If they're that low, then you might have to just reel it up or try to see if you can get the hoses up a little bit higher. But as you can see, got a good distance between the catwalk and the hoses. Make sure your fuel cap is sealed tight, so you know you're good to go on that. Make sure your lights up here are working. Make sure that they're just, the light is just on and there's no cracked, and it's not, you know, obviously it's not loose, it's real sealed tight. So I can't get up there because obviously I'm not that tall, but you know, the light, you can tell that the light is still working. So we're gonna move on down here. Oh, one more thing, folks. Flaps. Make sure your flaps are concealed tight. Make sure that they're not cracked, bent, broken. You know, just make sure they got a good free debris under the ground, because if they don't have a good free debris under the ground, DOT officers can't pull you over for that. for being that low. You always want to make sure you got a good, at least I say about a good 3 feet above the ground, something like that. So if you got a good distance between the mud flap and the ground, then you should be good. So, you know, just make sure that it's not touching the ground. So, all right, you know, there you go right here, another mud flap. Make sure that the mud flaps is intact. Got a good distance between you and the ground. Make sure that it's not cracked, bent, or broken, you know. Just make sure it's sealed up. Make sure your lights are still working, you know. You gotta have your both lights down there. Make sure they're still working. Make sure that your landing gear is still intact. Make sure your lever is still intact, so that's still working. Make sure your foot is still intact. And that's still working. I mean, that's still intact, so we're good. Right here, you also want to check your lights. Make sure the lights is not loose. It's not cracked, bent, broken. You know, just make sure that it's still blinking. You know, if it's still blinking, that's a good sign. And usually if you got a cracked one, you know, DOT officers will pull you over, and obviously they'll do inspection. They'll write you up and possibly give you a ticket for that. So make sure that, you know, these lights right here are just not cracked, that they're sealed tight, and you know, they're clean, they're good. So we'll go over here. Now these right here are your tandem tires. You want to make sure your tandem tires are basically the same with your dry tires. You know, make sure you expect them exactly how I expect the tires. Meaning thumping them, making sure the tread depth is deep, making sure the air pressures on there are good. You know, just the same thing you're gonna do with the tires up front, you're gonna do to the same tires back here. So, you know, just make sure you check it and everything is good. Also, I forgot to mention is your hose is down here. Most truck drivers don't pay attention to, but you want to make sure that your hoses are not hitting the ground while you're driving. Sometimes, as you can see, ours is not really that low. It's actually at a good height level, but usually truck drivers have hoses, air hoses, where it's so low to the ground that they'll hit the ground, and then actually next thing you know, the hoses might be torn, or they might be attached to something and they might rip apart. So you want to make sure that your hoses are lifted up to the ground. But as you can see, these hoses are good, so we're good to go. Then you got your mud flaps. Make sure, you know, mud flaps are good, they're intact. Also check your reflected lights, they're good, they're intact. The lights, make sure that your emergency lights is working, and then your ABS lights is working. Obviously your ABS lights is not on, so that's a good sign. But as my co-driver explained to you about the ABS lights, you want to make sure that it's not on. I mean, DOT officers will pull you over, and it is a big deal. So I know he showed you guys the trick under here, so most truck drivers do that so they can avoid that. But if your ABS lights is on, what I would do that. I would pull the plug and cut off the little wires. But the best thing is, if your ABS lights is on, then it could be a serious problem, maybe not. But if I were you, I would go to your nearest mechanic or go to your nearest truck stop and see if you can get that fixed. So, all right, next thing is our doors. You want to make sure that your doors is intact. Make sure it's locked. Make sure your lights are working. Obviously, our lights are working. Make sure that your bumper's not bent or broken. It's not broken. Make sure that your lights are still working under here. Make sure your license plate lights are working. Make sure that this is locked. We haul mail, so we got like two locks on there. But usually we just have to lock that and lock this. This lock right here doesn't really necessarily. We have to lock it because it's already locked once it go under this loop right here. But we keep it locked. And sometimes we don't. At this occasion right now, it's very secure. It's not going nowhere, so we're good to go. Also, make sure your lights again, and then just look up to your lights up here. Make sure these lights are working, that they're not cracked, don't say like they're glitching or anything like that. So it looks like it's good to go. So I'm gonna keep on going over here. Make sure your lights. Also, always check your lights. We're basically going to do the same thing what we did over here. Once you check your mud flaps, check your tires, check your tread depth. Now this is what I mean by worn out tread depth. If you can come over here and zoom in, as you can see, this tire is still good, but as you can see, it's a little worn right here. See, right here is not as deep as it is like right here. Right here, as you can see, it's getting a little worn, and this tire, I mean, this tire is still good to go, but as you can see, if you still drive with this tire for about, I don't know, maybe a good year, maybe half a year, then it could be going to the point where it's going to be faded and it might need a new tire to replace. But at this case right now, this tire is still good to go. So, all right, so still check your tires. Check your tires. Tires are good. Check your nug lugs. Check your air pressure. Make sure that's good. Also, same thing. Check your hoses. Check your apron. Make sure that's not disattached or cracked or broken. Check your lights. Make sure your lights is working. Obviously, they're still working. And check your landing gear. Same thing you did with your landing gear. You check over here, except for it doesn't have the lever. So you're just gonna check for your landing gear foot. Make sure that's not loose. That is intact, and it is. Check your mud flaps. Check your tires again. Check your bellow or your airbag. Make sure that's still intact and it's not ripped or leaking, or air leaks. Pardon me, air leaks. Make sure it's not, just make sure it's intact. Make sure it's just not, you don't hear any air coming out or none of that. So it looks like it's good to go. Also, mud flaps again. Check your gas seal. Make sure that gas seal is sealed up. And we're going back all the way over here. Check your steps for your debris. Make sure it's good to go. Check your mirrors again. Make sure there's no cracks. No, obviously it's messy, but we'll wash it once we get started rolling. But it's not cracked. No bugs on it, so it's still good to go. And last but not least, check your lights and check your tires, steer tires, and now we're back over here. Now over here is a little bit different than over there. On this side, you could see more of your belt. You can see more of your belt, see if it's ripped. You can see more of the alternator, see if it's still intact or if it looks like it's loose. You could see what else? You can see more of your fan over here on this side. See if it's not cracked or broken. I mean, you can still see, you can see more over here on this side. As you can see, everything looks like it's intact. It's ready to go. When you do your pre-trip, you necessarily don't have to check everything, but if you're an owner operator, well, you want to check everything, but if you're not a mechanic, I would check the things that you've been trained on. So obviously I haven't been trained on a lot of things that's in the engine. I'm not a mechanic, but I am telling you what I know. So what I know from right here, that it does look good and everything does look intact. So like I said, you want to check your brake chambers, drive tires, hoses, and your U-bolts, and looks like everything is good. And that right there, folks, is the end of my pre-trip. Thank you for watching.
Hi guys, I hope you loved this video and liked how I did a post trip and how Aaron over here, hopefully you like how he did his pre-trip. And you're gonna have to get in the comments below and let us know who you thought did the better job. Did you think he talked about more stuff, talked about things more detailed than I did? I think so. So he probably did the better job. So anyway, if you want to see more videos about anything in the truck driving industry, please, if there's anything that you'd like to see me or Aaron do videos of, please get in the comments below and we will try to do those as we have the opportunity to do so. Please critique us, correct us, let us know what we missed, things that we didn't talk about, how we could do a better job of doing another future pre-trip video. So anyway, you'll want to get in the comments below or get down below and hit that subscribe button. Please hit the bell so you're notified of all my upcoming videos. Leave any other comments or any questions that you have below, and leave a like, and I will catch you next video. Thanks for watching, guys. Catch you next video.